Thank you, everyone, for being here. UAB returns to action on the road this Saturday at Rice, a 1 o'clock p.m. kickoff on ESPN+. So with that, I'll turn over to Coach Mortensen.
Hey guys, obviously a tough loss on the road and a disappointing loss against UConn. Certainly give them credit. They've got a very good team. They're well coached. They've done a great job with their roster. They're 6-3 at this point and have got some good wins under their belt. That being said, definitely disappointed in the way that we played in a lot of areas. We, I would say had a lot of unforced errors early in the game that put us behind. Was pleased with the defense. Came out and they got a stop on the first possession. And then offensively, we actually drove down in the red zone pretty quick and clipped off a number of runs, for substantial yardage, and got into the high red zone, and then had a really costly turnover on second down with poor judgment on it, and probably had, I think based on the way we were running the ball, probably had a chance to stay in the driver's seat to a degree. Then 2 series later, we have another turnover. On a play where we have a guy that good player for us that ends up not completing a route totally. So pretty quick we got behind, and then later another series after that we've missed a snap and puts us on the -1. So I think my point in all that is that all those are unforced errors, and so we had a lot of guys that played really hard, played tough, played competitive in this game. Again, I think Solomon Beebe averaged well over 6 yards a carry. Javon Jackson was probably in that 5.5 ballpark, so we were running the ball well, but we let the game get away from us way too quick with unforced errors, and I think that was really kind of the story of the day. And certainly still tried to fight our way back into it after that happened. I think defensively, we could say maybe there's some opportunities to get off the field on third down, but I think offensively we've got to put our defense in a better position. When you talk about turning the ball over twice early and then having to punt from the -1, I think we had an opportunity to keep that game tight or potentially even be playing with a lead early on in the game. So that's just really the way we look at that. But anyway, moving on to this game, playing Rice this week, excited about that opportunity, another conference game, going on the road. They're a good team, good program. They have, of course, a new coaching staff. They've adopted a new offense, that has some unique elements to it. It's a little bit, has some triple option type components to it, but with some bigger bodies than you would traditionally see, out of some of the other teams that run the triple stuff, and definitely present some challenges. And then defensively, they've been good there, and they're still doing a good job and have good people. So we're excited to take on the challenge.
Just in general, you kind of talk about the first offensive series there. After getting a big defensive stop, and then you miss a slant there that could have went for maybe a touchdown, a big play. What is a big play at that moment? Just in general, not
Right.
necessarily in that game. What does a big play like that at that moment do for kind of setting a tone and that type of stuff?
Yeah, I think those things can set the tone a lot. And I think no matter how much you try to coach your team on, and it's still something we're working on, is trying to develop a emotionally tough and resilient team, but you're still dealing, there's a human element there. So I think when you can generate a big play early like that, it can really help, in some ways that are difficult to measure in terms of just the spirit and attitude of everyone on the team. And then the other thing too, one of the greatest, we talk about this a lot. I mean, two things that correlate, with winning and losing. We talked about the turnover margin, which I already addressed, in kind of that opening statement. The other thing is our explosive plays. And so you have an opportunity to have an explosive play early in the game, your odds of scoring on that drive go way up. So it's definitely a missed opportunity. Now, we were still able to overcome it and had some big runs on that drive and converted on the following play converted the third down too. But yeah, it still is a missed opportunity.
And what has been going well with the running game especially these last 2 weeks? It seems like when you've tried to run or when you do run, you run the ball well. Kind of what's been the difference maybe these last couple games as compared to maybe a few games before?
I think, I think our offensive line is doing a good job, in the communication process, making their IDs up front and getting targeted to the right people and playing with physicality and toughness and good technique. And then we have good backs. I think we have really good runners that going in the season were good, and I think they continue to get better through the course of the year. Their vision, their decision making, improves as well. And so those are certain things. And I think our RPO game too complements it, because, you force the defense hopefully to have to defend all your eligibles. So the two things kind of go hand in hand, where maybe you can create some space too through the use of the formations and through the RPOs. So that's been positive to see, and of course we still want to, still build on that run game too. But the last 2 weeks, it's definitely been improved.
You stuck with Ryder after putting him in the game.
Yeah.
What went into that decision, and then also what did you see from him?
Yeah, one, Jalen Kitna, had without disclosing too much specifically, had some pretty significant injuries coming out of that FAU game, and he is a absolute warrior competitor, and really battled his way back. And as I pointed out, he did convert that third down early in the game. But that being said, we felt like Ryder had earned an opportunity to play some in the game, and even I sought counsel on this too, but we were going to let Ryder go in for the third series, so he had an opportunity to play some, and it was scheduled. And then upon getting to that point, UConn does do a good job rushing the passer. They've got some exotic pressures they use on third down, so we wanted. And here's Jalen coming off injury. Ryder had showed the ability to escape, has some escapability and use his feet a little bit. So just, keeping Jalen out of harm's way, and felt like Ryder maybe gave us an opportunity to extend some plays if we needed to. So we ended up going that way the rest of the game.
What did you just see from him in terms of what can you take from that performance?
Yeah, I think, I think Ryder, is a good athlete. And so, as I mentioned, some of the escapability showed up. And I think, too, and I think he largely did a pretty good job in the game, battling and competing. I think he would probably tell you that there were things, from a command standpoint, and in his eyes were probably a little cleaner in the Memphis game, which sometimes when you prepare as a starter for most of the week, that preparation can help you, maybe play a little bit cleaner. But at the same time, too, as quarterbacks, we've got to take on the challenge of, can we take the mental reps and turn them into physical reps when we get them too? And he understands that too. So he did a lot of good things, but I also think he would tell you, like, hey, there are a couple things where, his eyes could have gotten him somewhere quicker, that maybe would have prevented a sack, or maybe he doesn't have to scramble. And we're going to have a chunk play or an explosive play on some of those too. And that's, again, he's only started one college football game. I think he's got an incredibly bright future, and still very excited about him.
And is the plan to kind of ride with him moving forward, or are you going to do two quarterback system? What's the plan moving forward?
Yeah, we're still discussing, exactly, how we're going to handle, handle that situation, and there's going to be some health things taken into consideration too as we get more information on that, in the coming days.
With Jalen Kidd on the rough day he had, what does that do confidence-wise for him?
Right. Well, I would say, Jalen's got a pretty large body of work, and he did not have a large body of work in this game. I think he only threw 5 passes. So I think it's kind of hard to, say a lot about just 5 passes in one game. There have been a lot of quarterbacks that started a game 2 of 5 and, maybe turn the ball over, that battle back and play a great game. So I think, particularly for a guy that's dealing with, 2 pretty significant injuries. So, I think his confidence should be in good shape. I mean, going into, the FAU game, he's leading. I mean, this is a good conference, and he's leading this conference in passing. He's at the top of the country in a lot of categories. So I think, and he's a very physically gifted guy. So I think Jalen Kitna has got every reason to, be very, very confident.
And for you as an interim head coach, I mean, you've been through a lot in 3 weeks. I mean, you've had a lot of situations. You've had a big win, a tough loss, and had to handle a bye week. And kind of what do you learn with every situation, and kind of what have you learned so far? Yeah,
no, I think, you've got to, there are obviously, one, I think going into a situation like this, have been, involved with this game for a long time, and fortunately have been around good people and good mentors. So a lot of situations that occur, I've seen them occur before, even if I wasn't always the primary decision maker, the one having to handle them. So I think a lot of it, you feel pretty prepared for, and but certainly, if you're not continuing to try to learn, in this profession, you're not going to last very long. So trying to use every opportunity as a chance to grow and learn, and I think one of the biggest things too, if I've learned anything, and people always want to ask me, hey, what did you learn from Coach Saban, or you know, have you asked him anything? And, you know, he obviously was a very intelligent, smart man, and a great leader. But he also, you know, I saw him seek counsel too, even at the stage he was at when I was around him, which is, I think says a lot. So also, you know, being a good listener to wise people and people you trust, you know, when you have to make some of these decisions.
You've actually had two of your best tackling games as a team against the two service academies where they ran more of this kind of option. Is it easier to tackle, I guess, when you know the team's going to run a little bit more, or does that have to do more with the personnel that's on the field? And can you kind of like maybe use that to fix your tackling problems?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, one, I mean, we're working on tackling a lot. You know, even in this, you know, going in this last game and coming out of the bye week, we're spending a lot of time on it. You know, it's a fundamental that's really important. And, you know, guys have to learn how to, you know, even in practice, you know, we're still learning to practice, right? We got to thud the runners in practice. Doesn't mean we tackle our guys to the ground all the time, but we got to learn how to thud the runners, how to wrap up and play with the right kind of fundamentals, because we do have guys in position a lot. And so those are things, though, that ultimately a lot of times, you know, the game's a reflection of practice habits. And so I think, you know, we're still trying to create the right kind of practice habits that are going to show up in the game regardless of who we're playing, a service academy or somebody else. And then to be clear, these guys, you know, it is an option-oriented offense in some respects, but it's not truly, you know, all the under center or triple. And of course, Navy and Army have evolved to a degree too. They're not always under center. So it does present some similar challenges, but there are some differences too. So I don't think it's totally apples to apples.
And then how much does Calvin Pitcher help you in the run game, and how big would he be in a game like this, regardless of, you know, just...
Yeah, no, I mean, Calvin's very helpful, you know, in the run game. And, you know, I think we've had a lot of guys, you know, play well. Emon Smalls and, you know, is another guy that's, you know, coming on and having a good year. So I think, you know, for a game like this, that, again, we have to still be prepared for a balanced attack. But, you know, having a guy like that really helps us, you know, against a heavy run team.
A couple of just quick follow-ups on this, a couple of things we've already said, but one on the being the head coach and the 2-minute drill you ran at the end of the first half.
Yep.
I mean, you do that every day in practice, and you've been a part of a lot of them, but it was really the first time that, you know, you're the ones calling the timeouts and stuff like that. What was that sort of like for you?
Well, it actually wasn't the first time, because the Memphis game, we had a 2-minute into half, and which we had to, you know, make some, you know, management decisions in regards to timeouts. And I think that touchdown we had at the end of half against Memphis helped us win the game, you know, in terms of how we managed the clock there. And, you know, that last touchdown, I think we called it with 7 seconds left. So we had some decisions to make, especially kind of in that field goal ballpark. And so, but no, I mean, I think, you know, even as a coordinator or even going back to playing quarterback, you know, you're always kind of playing the game mentally, you know, as to, okay, hey, how do we manage time? How do we use the clock here? When's the clock going to stop? How many timeouts do we have? Is it wiser to kick a field goal or you know, go for a touchdown? So a lot of those things, I think, you know, particularly, again, when you grow up playing quarterback, you know, those are conversations you have in those meeting rooms a lot. So it didn't feel that new, to be honest with you. You know, and of course nowadays everyone, you know, is knee deep in analytics too. So we've got all that information in the course of the game as well.
And you talked about Rice's option attack. Seems like the quarterback and the one running back really have a lot of explosives. I mean, they got a lot of big plays. Kind of what have they done to create those big plays, and how much is it those two guys? Yeah,
I think a lot of it, you know, when you talk about option football, it can create, you know, people always talk about forcing to play assignment sound on defense, and it's a little bit what even the RPO game can do as well. Is you've got to kind of account for all the eligibles, you know, that are out there, and it can spread you thin a little bit. And you know when you're coaching defense, what's one of the basic fundamentals of defense is you're always trying to, hey, we need 11 hats to the ball, right? We need to get 11 people to the football. And now, hey, we've got to have someone that's got the dive, that's got the pitch, that's got to be ready to take on, you know, force blocks and lead blocks and still have the quarterback. So I think when you create, and in a way, it's a way of creating space and creating one-on-ones. And when you create space and one-on-ones, if you have one missed, you know, if they can make one guy miss, sometimes there's no deep help or there's no secondary help. So I think that's one of the ways you can generate explosives when you run a system like that. And then again, you point, you know, the talent, the players, you know, the quarterback, you know, Jenkins and Jackson, you know, both those guys are part of that too, because they're really good players.
Anything else? All right, thanks, guys.
All right, great. Thanks, guys.